Picture yourself standing at a crossroads, the world spinning around you with voices, choices, and pressures pressing in from every direction. You feel the tension in your shoulders, the restlessness in your thoughts, the lingering memory of words you wish you hadn't spoken, and the unease that creeps in every time you check your bank balance. This is the battlefield you live on every single day, often without realizing it. And yet the real struggle isn't out there, in the circumstances you face. It's in the four forces that quietly control how you move through the world: your mouth, your mind, your mood, and your money. Every victory you've ever claimed and every disaster you've endured can be traced back to one or more of these four. Think of the last time you snapped in anger and damaged a relationship. That was your mouth working against you. Think of the moments when your thoughts spiraled into self-doubt and robbed you of action. That was your mind running wild. Think of the mornings when you woke up heavy with sadness or irritation and dragged that storm cloud into your work and conversations. That was your mood holding the reins. And think of the sleepless nights when bills piled high or you made purchases you regretted. That was your money slipping out of control. These are not separate problems. They're connected threads in the same fabric, and the quality of your life depends on whether you learn to weave them tightly together or let them fray apart. The hard truth is this: you are not cursed, not unlucky, not doomed by fate. You are out of control, and until you master these four areas, your life will continue to feel reactive, like a series of accidents you never meant to have. But once you take hold of them, once you learn to guide your words, direct your thoughts, regulate your emotions, and steward your money, you stop being a passenger. You become the architect. That is the promise of the journey you are about to walk. Now, here is the part most people miss. They think self-control is something you either have or you don't, that it's built into your personality. They say things like, "I just have a short temper," or "I've never been good with money," as if these qualities were genetic codes written in stone. But the reality is very different. Self-control is not a talent. It is a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained, strengthened, and refined until it becomes second nature. Imagine your ability to pause before speaking as a muscle. Every time you resist the urge to blurt out something reckless, you are performing a repetition, adding weight to that muscle. Your focus works the same way. Every time you redirect your thoughts from distraction to purpose, you're strengthening it. Your emotional regulation grows when you practice staying calm through storms. And every time you delay gratification with money, you train your financial discipline. The more reps you do, the stronger you get. But muscles fatigue, don't they? That's why after a long day of good choices, you might crumble at night, eating junk food you swore you'd avoid, or snapping at someone you love over something trivial. That isn't weakness, it's depletion. Just as your body tires, so does your self-control. The key isn't to shame yourself for these lapses, but to build stamina and design systems so the right choice requires less brute force. You wouldn't expect to win a marathon if you never trained. Why expect yourself to make disciplined choices all day if you've never built your capacity? Here's where it gets interesting. These four areas, mouth, mind, mood, money, are not isolated islands. They're a chain of dominoes. Push one, and the others fall. When you master your words, you also strengthen your thinking, because thoughtful speech requires thoughtful mind. When you learn to calm your emotions, you make wiser financial decisions, because spending is often driven by feelings, not logic. When you stabilize your money, you reduce stress that otherwise poisons your mood and relationships. Every gain multiplies. Every slip drags the others down. That's why most people feel like they're stuck in cycles, because they are. They haven't realized the pillars support each other, and when one cracks, the whole structure trembles. Now let's get practical. Imagine you are in a heated argument. Your natural impulse is to defend yourself, to react with sharp words. That moment feels small, but it's actually massive. If you lash out, the damage to your relationship might spark days of tension, guilt, and mistrust. Your mind replays the fight, fueling negative thoughts. Your mood sours, and you carry it into work. Stress builds, and maybe you spend impulsively to comfort yourself. One reaction with your mouth cascades into your mind, mood, and money. On the flip side, if you pause, breathe, and choose your words carefully, the change shifts in your favor. The relationship holds steady, your mind remains clear, your mood stable, and your money untouched. One choice in one pillar shapes all four. The foundation of control is awareness. You cannot master what you refuse to notice. This is why many people stay trapped. They're asleep at the wheel. They don't notice their patterns, so the same loops replay. They gossip without realizing the cost, entertain negative thoughts without challenging them, indulge moods without shifting them, spend without tracking. Awareness is like turning on the lights in a messy room. The mess was always there. Now you can see it, and once you see it, you can begin to clean. But awareness alone isn't enough. If you only watch your bad habits, you'll feel worse. The next step is intentional design. The environment you create, the routines you choose, the small daily rituals you commit to. These form the scaffolding of your control. For example, if you know you tend to blurt things out when emotional, you can design a rule. Count to 3 before responding. If you know your mind spirals at night, you can create a wind-down ritual. Journal your thoughts to clear them. If you know your mood dips after scrolling social media, you can replace that time with music, movement, or a phone call with someone uplifting. If you know your money slips through your fingers, you can set up automatic transfers to savings. So discipline happens without effort. Systems beat willpower every time. Delayed gratification is another cornerstone. We live in a world addicted to the instant. Instant food, instant entertainment, instant validation. The problem is that easy pleasures weaken our ability to wait. Yet all the best rewards, health, strong relationships, wealth, require patience. When you hold your tongue instead of lashing out, you delay gratification for the sake of peace. When you train your mind to focus instead of wandering, you delay the gratification of distraction. When you manage your emotions instead of indulging them, you delay the gratification of venting. When you save and invest instead of spending, you delay gratification for future freedom. This pattern, choosing the later, greater reward over the now, fleeting one, is the essence of control. Think of it like planting seeds. Eating the seed now gives you a brief taste, but planting it yields a tree that feeds you for decades. Every time you practice control, you plant seeds. The harvest doesn't come instantly, but when it arrives, it transforms everything. Let's zoom deeper into what happens if you ignore these forces. If you can't control your mouth, you sabotage trust. Words spoken in anger or carelessness leave scars that apologies can't always erase. If you can't control your mind, you become your own enemy, trapped in loops of worry, doubt, and distraction. If you can't control your mood, you're tossed around by external events, fragile, and unpredictable. If you can't control your money, you live in constant stress, your options limited, your freedom shackled. This isn't about morality, it's about quality of life. Each of these unchecked forces erodes your stability, leaving you reactive instead of proactive. Now contrast that with mastery. Imagine walking into a tense meeting and choosing words that calm the room instead of ignite it. Imagine catching your negative thoughts midstream and steering them into problem solving. Imagine noticing your mood dipping and having the tools to reset in minutes. Imagine looking at your bank account with peace because you've built reserves and investments that grow while you sleep. That is not a fantasy. It is the predictable result of training. Here's the liberating truth. You don't need perfection. You just need progress. If you improve your control in these 4 areas by even 10%, the ripple effects across your life are enormous. Relationships become smoother, your mind clearer, your emotions steadier, your finances stronger. Small hinges swing big doors. And yes, there will be lapses. You will still say things you regret, entertain unhelpful thoughts, wake up in a bad mood, and spend on something unnecessary. But the difference is this. Instead of spiraling, you'll notice, course correct, and recover faster. That is the real measure of control, not never falling, but rising quickly and learning each time. So as you take your first step into this journey, remember this picture. Your mouth, your mind, your mood, and your money are not random forces. They are levers. And when you learn to pull them with awareness and intention, you shift the machinery of your entire life. That is the power you hold, waiting to be trained, waiting to be unleashed. Think of your self-control as a living muscle inside you. It's not visible like your biceps or your abs, but it responds in the exact same way. It strengthens with repetition, weakens with neglect, and tires when overused. This is why so many people confuse discipline with personality. They assume some are born strong and others are doomed to weakness, when in reality, discipline is simply training. The person who appears naturally calm under pressure isn't blessed with special DNA. They've built the muscle of composure over years of practice. And the one who seems effortlessly financially disciplined probably spent years cultivating habits that turned into second nature. Now imagine you're at a gym. If you pick up a heavy weight without training, your arms give out. The same happens with self-control. If you expect yourself to resist temptation all day long without preparation, you will break under the weight of desire. This explains why you can stick to a diet perfectly until the evening and then devour a bag of chips before bed. Your control muscle was exhausted, just as you wouldn't blame your arms for failing to lift 300 pounds without training. You shouldn't blame your character for lapsing after hours of restraint. What you need is conditioning, not shame. Conditioning begins with small, repeatable exercises. When you pause before speaking, instead of reacting, that's 1 rep. When you choose to walk away from gossip, that's another. When you resist the urge to check your phone and stay focused, you've just trained again. When you save $5 instead of spending it impulsively, you've added weight to the bar. Over time, these reps build endurance. What once felt impossible, like staying calm during conflict or delaying gratification for months, becomes easier, almost automatic. But here's the nuance. Muscles don't just strengthen, they also fatigue. This is why you can't rely on willpower alone. Willpower is like the battery on your phone, useful but finite. If you depend on it for everything, you'll eventually run out of charge. The secret is to create systems that preserve your battery. You don't want to constantly fight urges. You want to design life so that good choices are easier and bad choices are harder. For example, if you keep junk food in your house, you'll eventually eat it when tired. If you remove it entirely, you've preserved willpower. If you rely on yourself to remember to save money, you'll fail on stressful days. But if you automate a transfer to savings, you've removed the battle altogether. Systems protect you from depletion. Think of environments as weight machines at the gym. They guide your motion and prevent bad form. When you structure your surroundings, you're essentially giving yourself rails to keep your control muscle moving in the right direction. Want to read more? Place books where you usually reach for your phone. Want to stop overspending? Freeze your credit card in an app until you truly need it. Want to regulate your mood? Keep a playlist of songs that uplift you within easy reach. By arranging your world, you shift from wrestling impulses to effortlessly flowing with them. Now, another dimension of control is recovery. Athletes don't just train, they rest, refuel, and repair. If they don't, their muscles break down. Likewise, if you drain your self-control day after day without replenishment, you burn out. Rest for your control muscle comes through rituals that reset your mind and body. Meditation, journaling, sleep, nutrition, exercise. Each of these refills the tank. Think about how much more patient you are after a good night's rest compared to after 5 hours of tossing and turning, or how much more focused you feel after a run than after scrolling on your phone for an hour. Recovery isn't optional. It's part of the training plan. This is where the concept of micro-recoveries comes in. You don't always need a weekend retreat to restore self-control. Sometimes all you need is a 2-minute breathing break, a walk around the block, or a glass of water and stretch. These tiny resets act like sips of fuel, keeping your control muscle alive throughout the day. The mistake most people make is waiting until they're completely depleted before taking a break. By then, it's too late. The impulse has already won. But if you build micro-recoveries into your daily rhythm, you maintain strength consistently. Another principle is progressive overload. In fitness, you increase weight gradually to grow stronger. In life, you do the same with self-control. You don't go from chaos to mastery overnight. You start with small challenges and slowly raise the stakes. If you can't resist scrolling social media for 3 hours, start with resisting for 10 minutes. Once you conquer 10, go for 30. If you can't save $1,000, save 10, then 50, then 100. Each small victory prepares you for the bigger ones. Too often, people quit because they tried to lift too heavy, too fast. The secret is to grow into strength through steady increments. Here's a mental model. Picture a thermostat. Your current habits and control levels are set to a certain temperature. When you make improvements, you push the temperature up, but without consistency, it slips back down. By reinforcing new habits daily, you slowly raise the set point of your life. Eventually, your normal becomes higher control. Just like an athlete's normal fitness is far beyond the average person's. You no longer need to think about pausing before speaking. You just do. You no longer need to force yourself to save. You simply operate that way. You've raised the thermostat permanently. But let's not ignore the reality of setbacks. Muscles strain. Habits break. You will relapse. The question is not if, but when. And the answer is resilience. When you slip, you don't throw the whole plan away. If you miss one workout, you return the next day. If you spend impulsively, you adjust your budget. If you snap at someone, you apologize and recommit to patience. The resilient person treats failure as feedback, not identity. They ask, what triggered me? How can I prepare differently? And what system do I need to add? Each slip becomes data, not defeat. Another overlooked factor is identity. Muscles grow not only by repetition, but also by belief. If you see yourself as someone who always fails, you will sabotage your own progress. If you see yourself as someone learning discipline, you'll persist. The stories you tell yourself shape how you train your self-control. Call yourself a procrastinator, and you'll keep procrastinating. Call yourself a builder of habits, and you'll behave accordingly. Every rep reinforces not just the muscle, but the identity of a disciplined person. To make this practical, adopt the mantra, I am training. When you resist an urge, remind yourself you are training. When you fail, remind yourself you are training. Training implies progress, imperfection, and growth. It removes the shame of setbacks and replaces it with purpose. Now let's apply this across the 4 forces. For your mouth, training looks like practicing silence in moments when you'd usually speak. For your mind, training is catching one negative thought and reframing it. For your mood, training is noticing one emotional trigger and choosing a calmer response. For your money, training is delaying one unnecessary purchase. Each act is a rep. Each rep builds the muscle. Each muscle strengthens the whole system. Over time, you'll notice the spillover effect. Your patience in speech makes your thinking clearer. Your clarity in thought steadies your mood. Your emotional stability reduces financial stress. Your financial order frees your mind to focus on higher goals. The interconnectedness means that no rep is wasted. Every small act compounds into broader control. So what's the challenge for you now? Start small. Identify one area today where you can practice a single rep of self-control. Don't aim to transform everything at once. Aim to train the muscle. Just as you wouldn't try to bench press 300 pounds on your first day at the gym, don't try to overhaul your life in one day. Pick up a light weight, lift it consistently, and let your strength grow. Before long, what once felt impossible will feel natural. That's how control works. Gradually, invisibly. Then suddenly, it becomes who you are. Your words are more than sounds in the air. They are currents of energy that shape relationships, influence opportunities, and even sculpt your own sense of self. Every syllable you speak has weight. Think about it. One compliment has the power to lift someone for an entire day, while one insult can stick in their heart for years. Your mouth is a gateway. It can open doors or slam them shut, nurture trust or breed resentment, sow encouragement or plant doubt. That is why learning to control what leaves your lips is not a trivial skill, but a defining force in your life. Now, pause and reflect on the last time you said something you regretted. Maybe it was a heated argument where anger took the wheel. Maybe it was a careless remark that landed sharper than you intended. In the moment, it felt good to release. But afterward, regret gnawed at you. That single slip may have cost you respect, closeness, or even an opportunity. This is the hidden tax of an uncontrolled mouth. Damage that spreads further than you imagine, because words echo long after the sound fades. Control begins with silence. In a culture where everyone rushes to broadcast opinions, silence becomes a rare and powerful discipline. Imagine yourself in a meeting where tension rises. Everyone scrambles to justify themselves, defend their point, or prove their worth. You choose to pause. You listen, observe, and weigh your words. That silence draws attention. People start leaning in, wondering what you will say when you finally speak. And when you do, your words carry weight precisely because they are not drowned in noise. The practice is simple. Insert a pause before speaking, especially when emotions surge. Count 3 seconds in your head. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to say true? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? Will it build or break? These micro-pauses act like brakes on a runaway car. They prevent you from hurling words you can't take back. Over time, this pause becomes automatic, a built-in filter that screens your impulses. But control isn't only about what you say to others. It's also about what you whisper to yourself. Your internal dialogue, the constant commentary in your mind, shapes your confidence, actions, and even your destiny. If your inner voice is filled with criticism, I'm not good enough, I'll never succeed, I always fail, then you're programming failure into your system. On the other hand, if your inner voice says, I'm learning, I'm growing, I can handle this, you are wiring resilience and confidence. Your brain listens to your mouth, even when no one else does. Think of your inner talk as seeds. Plant negative seeds, and weeds of self-doubt will choke your growth. Plant positive seeds, and a garden of possibility will bloom. This isn't about blind optimism or empty affirmations. It's about choosing language that empowers rather than cripples. Instead of, this will never work, try, how could this work? Instead of, I always screw up, try, I didn't succeed this time, but I'm learning for the next. That shift changes not just your mood in the moment, but your trajectory over time. Questions are especially powerful tools of the mouth. While statements shut doors, questions open them. Consider the difference. This won't work ends the conversation. What would need to happen for this to work invites ideas and collaboration. The first creates resistance. The second sparks creativity. Leaders, innovators, and influencers master this by asking the right questions at the right time. You can do the same in your personal life. Instead of telling a friend what they should do, ask, what outcome do you want most, and what steps could get you there? Your mouth becomes a catalyst, not a hammer. Equally important is choosing your battles. Not every slight deserves a response. Not every disagreement requires a debate. Not every mistake needs pointing out. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Picture yourself at a family dinner where someone provokes you with a sarcastic comment. Reacting would escalate the tension. Choosing silence allows the moment to pass without fueling the fire. That restraint protects your peace and preserves the relationship. True control isn't about having the perfect comeback. It's about having the strength not to need one. Now let's talk about destructive speech patterns that drain your power. Gossip is poison, not just to the subject of the gossip, but to you as the speaker. When you indulge in it, you signal to others that you can't be trusted, and you flood your environment with negativity. Complaining works the same way. It feels like relief in the moment, but it rewires your brain to focus on problems rather than solutions. Over time, you become blind to opportunities because your mouth has trained your mind to see only obstacles. Replace gossip with praise. Replace complaints with constructive suggestions, and watch your influence grow. Another area where the mouth holds tremendous power is feedback, both giving and receiving. Most people dread feedback, either because they deliver it harshly or because they receive it defensively. But feedback, when handled with skill, becomes a tool for growth. When giving feedback, focus on behavior, not identity. Say, when you arrive late, it affects our schedule, instead of, you're so unreliable. The first invites improvement. The second provokes defensiveness. When receiving feedback, resist the urge to justify or argue. Instead, listen, ask clarifying questions, and thank the person for their perspective. Even if you disagree, you gain insight into how you're perceived, and perception shapes opportunity. The long-term consequences of words cannot be overstated. Encouragement you offer today might fuel someone's courage for years. A harsh insult you blurt might be remembered long after you've forgotten it. Promises you make create expectations that either build trust or shatter it. This is why controlling your mouth is not simply about etiquette. It is about legacy. Every word is a brick in the structure of your reputation. Build carefully, and people will stand on what you've built long after you're gone. Let's ground this in a scenario. Imagine two leaders at work. The first reacts impulsively to stress, shouting orders, criticizing mistakes, and venting frustrations. The second pauses, frames challenges as opportunities, asks thoughtful questions, and delivers feedback with clarity. Over time, which leader earns loyalty, respect, and greater influence? The answer is obvious. Both may have similar skills on paper, but the one who controls their mouth controls the room. Now bring it closer to home. Think about your partner, your children, your friends. Words you speak in those relationships shape the climate of your family and your social circle. If your default language is criticism, sarcasm, or negativity, then the atmosphere will be heavy, defensive, and tense. If your default language is encouragement, gratitude, and curiosity, then the atmosphere will be light, trusting, and energizing. You have the power to set the emotional temperature of your relationships simply by choosing how you speak. So how do you train this control? Start with awareness. For one day, pay attention to every word you speak aloud and every internal phrase you repeat to yourself. Notice patterns. Do you complain often? Do you interrupt? Do you tear yourself down internally? Awareness is the mirror. Once you see clearly, begin the training. Add the 3-second pause. Swap one negative phrase for a constructive one. Replace one complaint with a suggestion. Catch yourself gossiping and stop mid-sentence. These micro-adjustments are the reps that build mastery. Over time, your words will become sharper tools, capable of carving opportunities instead of creating wounds. And as your mouth comes under control, you'll find your other pillars shifting too. Your mind will sharpen, because words discipline thoughts. Your mood will steady, because your speech regulates emotion. Your money will improve, because many financial opportunities are born from conversations handled with wisdom. The mouth, once a wildfire, becomes a torch you can aim with precision. Your mind is the battlefield where every victory or defeat begins. Before you speak, before you act, before you spend $1 or shift your mood, a thought takes root. If your thoughts are chaotic, no amount of discipline in other areas will hold for long. But when your mind is trained, focused, clear, and directed, you create a foundation that holds steady even under pressure. The truth is simple. Control your mind, and you control your life. Leave it untamed, and you live as a slave to impulses and illusions. Think about the constant stream of thoughts flowing through your head. Most people experience tens of thousands of them each day. the majority recycled from yesterday, left unchecked. These thoughts become loops of worry, self-doubt, comparison, and distraction. It's like a radio that never turns off, blasting static until you no longer hear it, but still feel drained by it. The first step toward control is noticing the noise. Until you recognize the chatter, you can't quiet it. Let's take worry as an example. You replay conversations, anticipate disasters, and imagine worst-case scenarios that never happen. Each thought is like a spark, and soon you're standing in the middle of a wildfire of anxiety. Control doesn't mean pretending nothing can go wrong. It means redirecting the sparks before they ignite. Instead of asking, "What if this goes wrong?" train your mind to ask, "What is within my control right now?" That single shift breaks the spiral. You move from helplessness to agency, from panic to problem solving. Another mental trap is self-doubt. That voice inside says, "You're not ready. You'll mess up. You don't belong." Left unchallenged, these thoughts paralyze you. But here's the truth. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the decision to act despite doubt. Think of athletes before a big game. They feel nerves. They hear the same doubts you do, but they reframe them. This means I care. This means I'm alive. Let's channel it. You can do the same. When the voice of doubt whispers, don't argue endlessly. Acknowledge it, then move forward anyway. Each time you act, you weaken its grip. Focus is another critical dimension of the mind. In a world of endless distractions, focus is a superpower. Yet most people treat their attention like an open faucet, pouring it on anything that flashes or pings. If your mind is scattered, your life will be scattered. Training focus begins with simple acts. Put your phone in another room for an hour, set a timer, and give one task your undivided attention. Notice how much deeper you think and how much faster you work. This is not about grinding endlessly, but about giving your full presence to whatever matters most in that moment. Visualization is one of the most underused tools of mental mastery. Elite athletes, performers, and leaders use it to prepare their minds for success. They don't just imagine winning, they rehearse the process in detail. A basketball player visualizes the arc of the ball, the feel of the court under their shoes, the sound of the swish. You can apply this same method to your own life. Before a difficult conversation, visualize yourself calm, articulate, and compassionate. Before a presentation, imagine the clarity of your delivery and the nods of your audience. By rehearsing in your mind, you train your brain to recognize success as familiar, making it easier to execute when the moment arrives. Let's talk about reframing. Your mind has the power to assign meaning to every event. Two people can face the same setback and interpret it entirely differently. One says, "This is the end," while the other says, "This is the lesson." The event is the same. The frame is different. Reframing is the conscious act of choosing interpretations that empower rather than weaken you. Lost your job? You could frame it as catastrophe, or you could frame it as the push you needed to pursue a better path. Reframing doesn't erase pain, it redirects it into growth. Another practical tool is thought labeling. Instead of getting lost in a swirl of emotions, you step back and name the thought. This is worry. This is anger. This is excitement. By labeling, you create distance. You stop being inside the storm and start observing it. From that vantage point, you regain choice. You can let the thought drift by instead of being swept away. This practice, rooted in mindfulness, takes just seconds, but creates profound calm. Consider the role of gratitude in controlling the mind. Gratitude isn't about ignoring problems. It's about shifting focus to what's already working. When you train your mind to notice blessings, health, relationships, opportunities, you starve the roots of envy and fear. Gratitude rewires the brain, literally strengthening neural pathways that promote optimism and resilience. A simple practice. Each morning, list 3 things you're thankful for, no matter how small. Over time, this habit tunes your mental radio to a clearer, steadier frequency. Let's ground this in a real scenario. Imagine 2 professionals face a tough setback. A project they poured energy into fails. The first person spirals. I'm worthless. I'll never succeed. Their mind breeds paralysis. The second person reframes. This is feedback. I learned what doesn't work. They reflect, adjust, and move forward stronger. Same event, different control of thought. Which one do you think will thrive long term? That's the power of mastering your mental frame. Discipline of the mind also means curating what enters it. Just as you wouldn't eat garbage and expect health, you can't feed your mind endless negativity and expect clarity. The media you consume, the conversations you engage in, the information you scroll through, all of it becomes raw material for your thoughts. If your inputs are chaotic, your outputs will be too. Protect your mental diet. Choose books, podcasts, and conversations that fuel growth. Limit the time you spend drowning in outrage or trivial distractions. What you feed your mind today becomes the thoughts you live with tomorrow. Another enemy of mental control is multitasking. Many wear it as a badge of honor. But the truth is that multitasking fractures your focus and lowers your quality of thought. Your brain switches rapidly between tasks, burning energy with every shift, leaving you exhausted yet unproductive. The antidote is single tasking. Do one thing with full attention, then move to the next. It sounds simple, but in practice, it's revolutionary. Single tasking restores depth in a shallow world. So how do you train the mind daily? Start small. Spend 5 minutes each morning in silence, observing your thoughts without judgment. Practice labeling them. Pick one task each day to do with full focus. No distractions. Write down one reframe for a challenge you're facing. End your day by listing what you're grateful for. These habits are mental reps. They might feel insignificant, but together, they build a fortress of clarity and resilience. When your mind comes under your control, everything else follows. Your words sharpen, your moods stabilize, your financial choices become wiser. The mind is the general of the army, directing every other unit. If the general is scattered, the soldiers stumble. If the general is clear and steady, the army advances with power. You have the ability to train that general. And when you do, the battles of life will look very different. Money is more than paper or numbers in a bank account. It is energy, freedom, and choice condensed into a tangible form. Yet for many people, money feels like a chain rather than a key. You may have experienced that knot in your stomach when bills pile up, that tension in your chest when an unexpected expense shows up, or the frustration of watching your paycheck vanish faster than it arrives. Without control over money, even the strongest mind and mood eventually crumble under the weight of financial stress. But when you learn to master money, truly master it, you shift from being at the mercy of circumstances to becoming the architect of security and opportunity. The first principle is awareness. Most people operate in financial fog. They know vaguely what they earn, but they have no precise idea where it all goes. Days turn into months, and months into years, with nothing to show for the effort of working. Control begins with clarity. Tracking every dollar is not about restriction. It's about illumination. Imagine walking into a dark room. You bump into furniture, stub your toe, and feel disoriented. Now imagine flipping on the light. Suddenly, you see the path clearly. That's what financial awareness does. For 1 week, write down every expense, no matter how small. That latte, that impulse app purchase, that lunch on the go, it all matters. The simple act of observing brings hidden patterns into the light. Once awareness grows, the next step is intentional planning. Call it a budget if you like, but think of it as a blueprint for your financial house. A house built without a plan collapses. A life spent without a financial plan does the same. But here's where most people stumble. They create budgets that feel like punishment. They slash every enjoyable expense and set themselves up for failure. Real control doesn't mean living like a monk. It means aligning spending with values. If travel matters deeply to you, allocate for it proudly. If you love books, set aside funds for them. Cut only what doesn't align with your priorities, and you'll find the process empowering instead of suffocating. Another pillar of money control is distinguishing needs from wants. It sounds simple, yet in a culture of constant advertising, the lines blur. Needs sustain life, food, shelter, clothing, transportation. Wants enhance it, sometimes beautifully, sometimes wastefully. A need is having shoes. A want is having 10 pairs in different colors you rarely wear. A need is nourishment. A want is gourmet takeout 5 nights a week. This doesn't mean you must eliminate every want. Life should include joy. But when wants masquerade as needs, they devour your financial future. Control is pausing before each purchase and asking, does this serve survival? Or is it a desire I can plan for later? Let's address the silent thief of wealth: impulse. Emotional spending often fills voids that have nothing to do with money. You feel bored, so you shop. You feel stressed, so you swipe. You feel insecure, so you buy status symbols. Each purchase soothes for a moment, but leaves regret. To break this cycle, create a delay system. When you want to buy something significant, wait 24 hours. For bigger purchases, wait a week. During that time, notice how the urgency fades. Often, you'll realize the item wasn't as necessary as it felt in the moment. And when you do choose to buy, it's with clarity, not compulsion. One of the most powerful shields you can build is an emergency fund. Life is unpredictable. Cars break down, jobs end, illnesses arrive without warning, without a cushion. Each surprise becomes a crisis. But with even 3 to 6 months of expenses set aside, storms become inconveniences rather than disasters. Imagine the peace of knowing you can handle a sudden layoff or medical bill without spiraling into debt. That security is priceless, and it begins one small deposit at a time. Even if it's just $20 a week, consistency builds safety faster than you think. Next comes the principle of paying yourself first. Most people do the opposite. They pay bills, buy wants, and hope something is left for savings. But hope is not a strategy. When you pay yourself first, even a modest amount, you shift into wealth-building mode. Set up an automatic transfer that moves money into savings or investment accounts before you touch the rest. You won't feel the absence, but you'll watch the future grow quietly in the background. This is how ordinary earners create extraordinary security. Compound interest is the silent partner of disciplined people. Think of it as money's way of multiplying itself. When you invest, your money earns returns. Then those returns earn returns, and the cycle continues. Over years, the growth becomes exponential. The earlier you start, the more powerful it becomes. 10 years of delay can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars lost. Control isn't about timing the market perfectly. It's about giving time enough space to work its magic. Debt is another battlefield. Not all debt is destructive, but much of it is. High-interest credit card balances drain wealth like a leaking bucket. Every dollar spent on interest is a dollar stolen from your future. Make eliminating toxic debt a top priority. At the same time, recognize that some debt can be leveraged strategically. Mortgages on appreciating property, education that expands earning potential. The key is intentionality. You borrow with a clear purpose and a defined plan for repayment, not to mask emotions or chase fleeting status. Beyond managing expenses, true money mastery involves increasing income. Cutting costs has limits, growth does not. Developing skills, seeking promotions, starting side projects, or building businesses all expand your capacity. Think of money like a river. Reducing expenses is building dams to conserve water, but increasing income is opening new streams. Both matter. Both together create abundance. Yet money is never just about math. It is deeply emotional and psychological. Some people hoard because they fear scarcity. Others overspend to prove worth. Some avoid finances altogether because of shame. Recognizing your money story is essential. What did you learn about money growing up? Did you hear constant arguments? Or was money treated as taboo? Did you absorb beliefs that wealth is selfish or unattainable? These subconscious scripts often drive behavior more than any spreadsheet. To change your financial future, you must rewrite the story in your mind. A healthy money mindset is one of stewardship and empowerment. You are not a victim of money. You are its manager. Each dollar is a soldier, and you are the general directing it. Will you send it into battles that win freedom, or will you let it desert into waste? Money obeys whoever commands it with clarity. When you take charge, you discover that wealth is less about luck and more about discipline and vision. Let's ground this with an example. Imagine two friends, both earning the same salary. One spends freely, rationalizing that they deserve enjoyment now. They lease expensive cars, eat out daily, and carry credit card balances. At 35, they feel trapped, paycheck to paycheck, with little to show. The other begins modestly, tracking expenses, building an emergency fund, investing a small percentage monthly. At 35, they have a growing portfolio, freedom to travel, and peace of mind. The difference isn't income, it's control. Which path do you want? Practical strategies make the difference. Automate savings so discipline doesn't rely on willpower. Simplify investments, index funds, retirement accounts, so you don't get lost in complexity. Review your finances weekly, not as punishment, but as stewardship. Celebrate small wins, the credit card balance dropping, the emergency fund reaching its first milestone, the investment account crossing a threshold. These victories build momentum, proving to yourself that control is possible. Finally, remember this. Money is not the end goal. It is a tool. It can build a life aligned with your values, or it can enslave you if unmanaged. Mastery comes when you use money to create freedom, not to fill voids. You don't need millions to feel wealthy. You need clarity, discipline, and purpose. When your money serves your vision, instead of controlling your mood, you experience a freedom Many chase, but few find. Control your money, and you reclaim your future. You move from survival mode to creation mode. You make decisions from strength, not fear. And just as with mouth, mind, and mood, every step of mastery compounds over time. The earlier you start, the greater the transformation. The question is not whether money will shape your life. It will. The question is whether you will shape it intentionally or let it drift through your fingers. You've seen how control of your mouth, mind, mood, and money can transform your life. But there is an invisible enemy that sabotages all four. It creeps in quietly, often disguised as caution, humility, or even motivation. This enemy is self-sabotage. You don't always notice it in the moment, but its fingerprints are on missed opportunities, broken commitments, abandoned goals, and cycles of frustration that repeat again and again. To master yourself fully, you must understand the psychology of why you so often become your own obstacle. Self-sabotage begins with identity. Deep down, you may carry beliefs about what you deserve. If somewhere inside you've accepted the idea that you don't deserve success, love, or abundance, your mind will find ways to keep your life aligned with that belief. You'll procrastinate before finishing an important project, pick fights in relationships just as they're getting stronger, or spend recklessly when you're close to financial stability. Each of these behaviors feels isolated in the moment, but together, they reveal a pattern. You're pulling yourself back down to the level you secretly believe you belong. Consider perfectionism. At first glance, it looks like striving for excellence. But look closer, and you'll see that perfectionism is one of the most destructive forms of sabotage. You avoid taking action because you can't guarantee flawless results. You delay launching the business, publishing the book, asking for the promotion, all because you fear imperfection. What you tell yourself is, "I'm just being careful." What's really happening is paralysis. Excellence grows through iteration. You cannot refine what you never begin. Another common form is imposter syndrome. You may achieve something good, land a new job, close a deal, receive praise, yet instead of owning it, you dismiss it as luck. You downplay your efforts, certain you're one mistake away from being exposed. This fear pushes you to avoid visibility, decline opportunities, or overwork to prove yourself. But the truth is this: competence is built by action, not by endless reassurance. Every person you admire once felt unqualified too. The difference is that they stepped forward anyway. Then there is procrastination. On the surface, procrastination feels like laziness, but it's usually rooted in fear. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment. You delay because doing nothing feels safer than risking disappointment. But each time you procrastinate, you strengthen the belief that you can't handle discomfort. Control of your time begins with breaking this cycle. Instead of asking, "How do I finish this massive task?" ask, "What is the smallest step I can take right now?" Action dismantles fear, while delay feeds it. Self-sabotage also appears in how you talk to yourself. Your internal dialogue is often harsher than anything you'd say to another person. You tell yourself, "I always fail. I'll never change. I'm not smart enough." These words aren't just noise. They shape your behavior. When your inner voice becomes an unrelenting critic, you unconsciously live down to its expectations. The antidote is awareness followed by deliberate rescript. Catch yourself mid-thought and reframe. "I haven't mastered this yet, but I'm learning. I've made mistakes, but I'm not defined by them." Fear of success may sound strange, but it runs deeper than most realize. Success brings change, visibility, and new responsibilities. It might mean more expectations from others, jealousy from peers, or the possibility of losing what you've built. Subconsciously, this can feel threatening, so you derail yourself right before the breakthrough, missing deadlines, skipping practice, picking arguments, making impulsive choices. To counter this, visualize not just the achievement, but your ability to handle what comes with it. Success is not a trap. It's a new chapter that you are capable of managing. One striking feature of self-sabotage is timing. It often intensifies when you're closest to progress. Think about diets abandoned right before real results show, relationships sabotaged when intimacy deepens, or businesses neglected as they near profitability. This isn't coincidence. It's your old identity fighting to stay alive. Change threatens the comfort zone, and your subconscious clings to what feels familiar, even if it's painful. Recognizing this pattern is powerful. When you feel the sudden urge to quit, just as things are improving, ask yourself, is this really intuition, or is it fear of growth? Overcoming sabotage requires both awareness and systems. Awareness means noticing the triggers, perfectionist standards, critical self-talk, avoidance behaviors. Systems mean creating external supports, so your progress doesn't depend solely on willpower. For example, set public deadlines to counter procrastination. Join a mastermind group that celebrates progress, not perfection. To disarm imposter syndrome, use automatic transfers to savings accounts to prevent impulsive spending. Structure reduces the room for sabotage to thrive. Accountability is another antidote. When you commit only to yourself, sabotage whispers you out of action. But when others are involved, mentors, partners, communities, you create social contracts that strengthen follow-through. A promise spoken aloud is harder to break than one hidden in your head. Let's imagine a scenario. You decide to start running 3 mornings a week, alone. You might hit snooze when the alarm rings, but if you've agreed to meet a friend at the track, you show up, even when you're tired. That's accountability. Over time, the external support builds an internal habit. Eventually, you run because it's who you are, not because someone is waiting. Rewriting your identity is central to dismantling sabotage. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who always quits or someone who never manages money well, begin to see yourself as a disciplined person, a builder, a learner. Identity fuels behavior. The more you identify with growth, the less room sabotage has to anchor you. Start with small wins that reinforce the new identity. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, you're casting a vote for who you want to become. Another practice is to challenge your sabotaging thoughts with evidence. When the voice says, "You always fail," list times you succeeded. When it says, "You're not ready," remind yourself of skills you've developed. Evidence dismantles the lies your fear tries to tell. Above all, treat yourself with compassion. Self-sabotage thrives on shame. When you berate yourself for mistakes, you reinforce the cycle. But when you respond with curiosity instead, "Why did I act that way? What can I learn?" you break the loop. Compassion doesn't mean excusing destructive behavior. It means creating space to grow without drowning in guilt. Remember, sabotage is not a permanent identity. It's a habit of thought and action that can be replaced. The moment you see the pattern, you have power. You can step back, reframe, and choose differently. You can build systems that carry you through moments of weakness. You can rewrite the story you tell about yourself. When you dismantle self-sabotage, every other area of life accelerates. Your mouth speaks more wisely because you're not undermining yourself with reckless words. Your mind focuses more clearly because doubt no longer dominates. Your mood steadies because you're not trapped in cycles of guilt. Your money grows because you're no longer derailing progress with impulsive choices. You are not doomed to repeat the same mistakes forever. You are capable of catching the patterns, rewiring the thoughts, and building a new track forward. Self-sabotage is sneaky, but it is not stronger than your awareness and intention. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you act against it, you prove to yourself that the old story no longer rules your future. Discipline is often misunderstood. People imagine it as a grim face, clenched fists, endless sacrifice, and joyless effort. But discipline, in truth, is freedom. It is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It is not punishment. It is alignment. Discipline is the art of bringing your daily choices into harmony with your deepest values. Without it, you drift. With it, you move deliberately, one steady step at a time, toward the life you dream of. Think of discipline as the scaffolding that holds up a building under construction. Your goals are the blueprint. Your habits are the bricks. But without the scaffolding, the structure collapses before it's complete. This is why talent alone is never enough. Knowledge alone is never enough. Even passion alone is never enough. Discipline is what turns inspiration into reality. The first cornerstone of discipline is clarity. You cannot be disciplined about everything. You must know what truly matters. If you try to overhaul your diet, launch 3 businesses, master meditation, and save half your income all at once, you will burn out. Discipline requires focus. Ask yourself, what are the top 3 areas of my life where disciplined action would create the most transformation? That clarity creates the lens through which every decision is filtered. Discipline also demands that you connect with your why. It's easy to abandon habits that feel like obligations imposed from outside. But when discipline is rooted in a personal vision, it becomes sustainable. Waking up early because successful people do it feels forced. Waking up early because you cherish that quiet hour to write, exercise, or plan your day feels empowering. You must translate each discipline into a personal story. This is not something I have to do. This is who I am becoming. Another principle is starting small. Many people fail because they overestimate what they can sustain. They try to sprint a marathon. They wake up one Monday and decide to cut all sugar, run 5 miles, meditate an hour, read a book a week, and double their savings. By Friday, exhaustion wins and they quit. Real discipline is built the way muscles are built, progressive resistance, 1 rep at a time. Begin with what you can maintain consistently, even if it feels too small. 1 glass of water first thing in the morning, 5 minutes of journaling, 10 minutes of focused work before checking messages. Consistency beats intensity when building habits. Momentum then becomes your ally. When you prove to yourself you can follow through in small ways, your identity shifts. You're no longer someone who tries and fails. You're someone who keeps promises to yourself. This identity fuels larger commitments. The person who does 10 push-ups daily becomes the person who embraces a full workout. The person who saves $10 consistently becomes the person who manages investments. Discipline compounds. Environment plays a huge role in discipline. Willpower alone is fragile. The environment can make or break your consistency. If junk food fills your kitchen, resisting it 3 times a day drains energy you could spend elsewhere. If your phone pings with endless notifications, focusing requires constant battle. Instead of fighting temptation endlessly, design your surroundings to support your goals. Lay out workout clothes at night, so exercise becomes the obvious morning choice. Keep books where you lounge instead of your phone. Automate savings so money flows into accounts without effort. Make good choices easy and bad choices inconvenient. That is intelligent discipline. Triggers are another secret. Pair the habit you want with an existing behavior. If you want to stretch daily, do it immediately after brushing your teeth. If you want to practice gratitude, tie it to pouring your morning coffee. The existing habit becomes a trigger, reducing the friction of remembering. Over time, the link is automatic. You cannot imagine one without the other. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about persistence. You will miss days. You will slip into old patterns. The danger is not in failure itself, but in the story you tell afterward. The perfectionist says, "I missed one day, so I've failed entirely." The disciplined person says, "I missed one day, but tomorrow I return." That mindset keeps you moving forward long after perfectionists have quit. Celebration is another overlooked element of discipline. People assume progress must always feel grueling. But when you acknowledge each win, no matter how small, you reinforce the habit loop. Mark off days on a calendar. Record victories in a journal. Share progress with a trusted friend. These acknowledgments are not arrogance. They're fuel. They remind your brain that effort is worth it. Let's talk about the link between discipline and delayed gratification. Every powerful act of discipline is, at its core, a choice to sacrifice a short-term desire for a long-term benefit. Skipping dessert today to enjoy health tomorrow. Saving money today to enjoy freedom tomorrow. Pausing before snapping in anger today to enjoy stronger relationships tomorrow. Each disciplined act is a vote for your future self, and the accumulation of these votes is what builds the life you want. Another key insight: action often precedes motivation, not the other way around. Too many people wait until they feel like it. They assume discipline means waking up with endless energy, but disciplined people act even when motivation is absent. And here's the paradox. Once you start, motivation often arrives. You don't wait for inspiration to write. You start writing, and inspiration flows. You don't wait to feel like exercising. You begin moving, and energy awakens. Discipline breaks the trap of waiting and replaces it with doing. Think of a time you kept a promise to yourself, despite resistance. Maybe you completed a workout you didn't want to do. Maybe you saved money instead of spending. Remember how you felt afterward? That pride is deeper than the pleasure of indulgence. That is the essence of discipline. It builds self-respect. And when you respect yourself, you stop tolerating mediocrity in other areas of life. Discipline is not meant to crush spontaneity. In fact, it protects it. Imagine your finances are in order, your health is strong, your work is focused. Now, when an unexpected opportunity arises, a trip, a new project, a chance to help someone, you can say yes freely because the foundation is solid. Discipline doesn't eliminate freedom, it expands it. All 4 pillars, mouth, mind, mood, and money, depend on discipline. Pausing before speaking requires discipline. Redirecting negative thoughts requires discipline. Managing emotions in heated moments requires discipline. Sticking to a financial plan requires discipline. Each act strengthens the same muscle, and each victory in one area supports the others. When you practice pausing your words, you're also training the patience needed to save money. When you practice saving money, you're also strengthening the focus required to direct your thoughts. The muscle grows stronger with every use. The real test of discipline is not when life is smooth, but when it's stormy. Anyone can keep routines when circumstances are easy. But when stress mounts, when fatigue sets in, when challenges pile up, that's when discipline proves its worth. If you've built consistency in small times, you'll have reserves of strength in hard times. You won't crumble because the habits have become automatic. So let discipline become your quiet companion, not the loud drill sergeant, but the steady hand that guides you back on track. Let it whisper in the morning when you're tempted to sleep in. Remember why you started. Let it remind you in the store when temptation calls. Your future matters more than this impulse. Let it encourage you when you stumble. Get back up. Continue forward. This is how discipline evolves from something you do into something you are. It shifts from external effort to internal identity. You don't just act disciplined, you become disciplined. And when that happens, success is no longer a matter of chance. It becomes inevitable. Silence is often misunderstood. Many see it as weakness, passivity, or absence of contribution. Yet when wielded with intention, silence becomes one of the sharpest tools of influence and one of the deepest forms of self-control. Words can build or destroy, but silence has the power to shape the very ground on which conversations unfold. It creates space, commands attention, and forces others to reveal themselves. To control your mouth fully, you must not only learn what to say, but also when to say nothing at all. Think about the moments in your life where silence carried more weight than words. The pause before a friend confesses something vulnerable. The quiet after a powerful statement in a meeting where no one dares speak first. The stillness between questions in an interview that draws out deeper truths. These aren't empty spaces. They are charged, alive with meaning. Silence creates pressure, and in that pressure, truth often surfaces. Strategic silence works in negotiations. Imagine you're offered a deal at work or in business. Instead of immediately responding, you pause. The other side begins to fill the silence, often sweetening the offer or revealing information they hadn't planned to. Your restraint becomes leverage. The less you rush to fill the space, the more others reveal to you. Silence, in this way, is not passive. It is active listening sharpened into a tactical edge. But silence isn't only about external power. It's about internal mastery. When you learn to sit in silence with yourself, you begin to notice the noise within your mind. Most people fear silence because it confronts them with their thoughts. That's why they keep the TV on, music playing, or phones buzzing. But when you practice intentional silence, you discover clarity. You hear the stream of your inner voice, and in that awareness, you can begin to direct it. Silence is the soil where mindfulness grows. There's also silence as a form of respect. In a world where people constantly interrupt, the act of listening fully, without rushing to speak, becomes rare and precious. When you give someone your silence, you give them space to unfold. You communicate that their words matter. This doesn't mean you agree with everything said, but it shows presence. Often, what people crave most isn't advice, but to be heard. Your silence can become the gift that makes others feel valued. Now consider silence as emotional regulation. In heated moments, the impulse is to fire back, to match energy with energy. But silence breaks the cycle. When you choose not to escalate, you refuse to fuel the fire. Silence doesn't mean you let others trample you. It means you choose your response from a place of control rather than reaction. That brief pause is often the difference between a conflict that deepens and one that dissolves. Let's illustrate this with a workplace example. A colleague criticizes your idea harshly in front of others. Your instinct is to defend yourself immediately, maybe even attack back. But you pause. You let the silence stretch a few seconds. The room feels the weight. The colleague grows uneasy, realizing the sharpness of their tone. Then you calmly reply with a thoughtful question. Can you walk me through what specifically concerns you about this approach? The silence before your question gave your words gravity. Instead of defensiveness, you chose curiosity. That shift changes the entire dynamic. Silence can also be a form of boundary. Not every accusation deserves an explanation. Not every provocation requires a rebuttal. Sometimes the strongest stance is quiet withdrawal. When someone seeks to bait you into drama, your silence communicates indifference to the game. You refuse to hand them your energy. Over time, people learn not to test boundaries that are guarded by calm, unshakable silence. In relationships, silence used wisely can deepen intimacy. Shared quiet moments, watching a sunset, sitting together after a long day, holding hands without words, communicate connection beyond language. On the other hand, silence used poorly, stonewalling, punishing withdrawal, cold distance, erodes trust. The difference lies in intention. Is your silence a gift of presence, or is it a weapon of avoidance? Mastery means choosing silence as connection, not as control. Another overlooked use of silence is reflection. We live in a culture that rewards speed, instant replies, fast decisions, constant updates, but wisdom often requires stillness. Before major decisions, silence gives your intuition space to speak. Instead of reacting to pressure, you can ask, what do I really want here? What aligns with my values? Without silence, you risk living by reflex instead of intention. Strategic silence also applies to persuasion. Sales professionals, therapists, and leaders know the power of asking a strong question and then waiting. People often reveal more than they intended, simply because they're uncomfortable with the pause. The key is resisting the urge to jump in. If you hold the silence long enough, truth surfaces. Yet silence requires courage. It's easier to fill the air with chatter than to sit with the tension of quiet. It's easier to defend yourself than to let accusations hang unanswered. It's easier to interrupt than to patiently wait. But courage grows in stillness. Each time you resist the urge to fill the gap, you strengthen your command over yourself and your environment. Training in silence begins small. Practice waiting 2 or 3 seconds longer than feels natural before replying in conversation. Notice how much more you hear. In arguments, experiment with stepping back, breathing, and letting the other person finish fully before you respond. Spend a few minutes daily in literal silence. No phone, no noise, just presence. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. Over time, it becomes grounding. Imagine the ripple effect of this practice. In business, your silence makes your words more persuasive. In relationships, your silence makes your listening more loving. In personal growth, Your silence makes your thoughts more visible. In conflict, your silence makes your responses more strategic. Silence becomes not absence, but presence, an active force that shapes outcomes. Control of the mouth is not just about words spoken, but also about words withheld. Some of the greatest regrets in life come from things said in haste. Rarely do people regret what they didn't blurt out in anger. Silence protects you from unnecessary battles, from wasted energy, from wounds that take years to heal. It is restraint turned into wisdom. So let silence be one of your greatest allies. Let it sharpen your speech, deepen your relationships, guard your emotions, and expand your influence. Speak when words add value. Be silent when words would add noise. In this balance lies mastery, not only of the mouth, but of the self. Emotions flow through you like tides, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, sometimes rising without warning. Your mood is the filter through which you experience everything. The same day can feel either like a gift or a burden, depending on the state of your emotions. And while you cannot always control what triggers your feelings, you can absolutely learn to guide how you respond. Emotional intelligence is the skill that allows you to do this, and it is one of the most powerful forms of self-mastery you can ever develop. Think about the last time you reacted impulsively when overwhelmed by emotion. Maybe you snapped at someone you love, and only later regretted it. Maybe you made a purchase to soothe sadness, only to feel guilty after. Maybe you avoided a conversation because anxiety gripped you, and an opportunity passed by. These aren't random failures. They're signs that emotion, not intention, was steering the wheel. Emotional intelligence puts you back in the driver's seat. The first component is awareness. You can't regulate what you don't recognize. Too often, people move through life with moods they never pause to name. They just say, "I'm in a bad mood," without investigating further. Are you frustrated, lonely, tired, resentful, anxious? Each state has different causes and different solutions. By labeling your emotions, you shrink their power. The brain calms when it can categorize. Instead of being swept up in a storm, you say, "This is anger. This is sadness." That distance alone opens space for choice. The second component is understanding. Once you name an emotion, ask where it comes from. Are you angry because someone crossed a boundary? Or because you're actually afraid underneath? Are you sad because of loss? Or because of disappointment? Often, the surface feeling hides a deeper one. Understanding the root allows you to address the real issue instead of just treating symptoms. The third is regulation. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It means guiding them into constructive expression. You may feel anger, but instead of exploding, you channel it into assertive communication or physical activity. You may feel anxiety, but instead of freezing, you use it as fuel to prepare thoroughly. Regulation transforms emotions from tyrants into teachers. A powerful tool here is the pause. Between stimulus and response lies a small space, and in that space is your power. Someone criticizes you harshly. Your instinct is to lash back. But if you pause, take a breath, count to 3, sip water, you create a gap wide enough to choose a different reaction. That pause is the birthplace of maturity. Consider also the role of physiology. Emotions are not only mental, they're physical. Stress tightens your chest. Sadness slumps your posture. Joy lifts your shoulders. This means you can influence mood by shifting your body. Stand taller, breathe deeply, move energetically, and you send signals to the brain that alter how you feel. It may sound simplistic, but countless studies confirm this link. Body and mind form a loop. Change one, and the other follows. Language shapes emotions too. Notice the difference between saying, "I'm devastated," and "I'm disappointed." Both may describe a setback, but one magnifies pain, while the other contains it. The words you use internally and externally sculpt your mood. Practice softening catastrophic language and replacing it with more balanced terms. Instead of, "This is unbearable," try, "This is uncomfortable but temporary." You'll find your resilience rising instantly. Another element of emotional intelligence is empathy. To master your own emotions is powerful, but to understand and influence the emotions of others is transformative. Empathy doesn't mean absorbing everyone else's feelings. It means recognizing them, respecting them, and responding wisely. When a colleague is stressed, instead of dismissing it, you say, "I can see this is weighing on you." That acknowledgement lowers defenses and builds trust. In relationships, empathy turns conflicts into connections. You stop fighting over positions and start understanding perspectives. Boundaries are essential here. Emotional intelligence is not about becoming everyone's caretaker. It's about balancing empathy with self-respect. Without boundaries, you risk drowning in others' emotions. A boundary might sound like, "I care about what you're going through, but I need a moment to gather myself before we continue this conversation." Boundaries protect your emotional stability while preserving connection. Let's look at a workplace scenario. Imagine a manager facing a team under pressure. Deadlines loom, tensions rise, tempers flare. A manager without emotional intelligence might yell, micromanage, or collapse under stress. A manager with emotional intelligence notices the tension, acknowledges it, and redirects energy. "I know this deadline is tough. Let's break it into steps and tackle one at a time." The difference isn't the external situation. It's the internal regulation that shifts the entire atmosphere. In personal life, the principle is the same. Picture a parent coming home exhausted, finding their child full of energy and demands. Without control, the parent snaps, damaging trust. With emotional intelligence, the parent pauses, takes a deep breath, and shifts focus. "Give me 5 minutes to settle, and then I'm all yours." That single adjustment preserves both connection and peace. Another practice is emotional reframing. Instead of labeling nerves as fear, reframe them as excitement. The physical sensations are similar: racing heart, sweaty palms, but the interpretation changes your performance. Public speakers who tell themselves, "I'm excited," instead of "I'm terrified," perform significantly better. Reframing turns liability into fuel. Recovery is vital too. Just as your self-control muscle tires, so does your emotional regulation. You can't expect to remain calm under constant pressure without rest, sleep, solitude, laughter, nature. These are not luxuries, but necessities. They reset your emotional system. Think of them as cleaning the emotional slate so you can respond with fresh energy tomorrow. Above all, emotional intelligence requires humility. You won't master it overnight. You will still lose your temper, misread signals, or mismanage stress at times. The key is reflection afterward. Ask, "What triggered me? What could I do differently next time?" Each reflection is training for future strength. Over time, emotional intelligence transforms your life. Your relationships deepen because you listen better and react less impulsively. Your work improves because you lead with calm steadiness, instead of chaos. Your inner world grows lighter because you no longer drown in every passing feeling. You become the kind of person others trust instinctively, not because you never feel emotions, but because you handle them with grace. Master your emotions, and you master not only yourself, but the spaces you inhabit. Your presence becomes a source of calm in storms, a steady hand in crises, a safe place for others to open. Emotional intelligence is not a trick. It is a way of living that elevates everything it touches. Every day, you are shaped not only by your choices, but by the environment in which those choices take place. The truth is, willpower is fragile. You might imagine yourself as someone who makes strong decisions no matter the circumstances. But science and experience both show otherwise. Your surroundings either strengthen your discipline or slowly erode it. If you want lasting mastery over your mouth, mind, mood, and money, you must design environments that pull you toward control rather than push you into chaos. Start with your physical space. Look around the rooms where you spend the most time. What do they invite you to do? A living room dominated by a television invites hours of passive consumption. A desk cluttered with distractions invites procrastination. A kitchen filled with junk food invites poor health choices. Environments speak silently, but powerfully. The good news is, you can re-script them. Place books where you relax, not just remotes. Keep water within reach instead of soda. Organize your workspace so the first thing you see is a clear surface and the tools you need to work, not piles of unfinished tasks. Small changes in physical space often produce massive changes in behavior. Think of your digital environment next. Your phone and computer are gateways that either feed your mind with noise or with nourishment. Every notification, every endless scroll, every algorithm-designed distraction siphons your attention. You cannot control the digital flood, but you can control your gates. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Curate your feeds so they show what inspires rather than what enrages. Delete apps that devour time without adding value. Replace mindless scrolling with intentional learning, podcasts, audiobooks, courses. If your digital world is designed well, it becomes an ally instead of an enemy. Now consider your social environment. The people you spend time with shape your norms more than you realize. If you surround yourself with complainers, you'll find yourself complaining. If you spend hours with people who gossip, you'll speak more carelessly. If your closest friends treat money recklessly, your habits will mirror theirs. This isn't weakness, it's human psychology. We absorb the tone of our tribe. That means one of the greatest acts of self-mastery is curating your circle. Seek out those who challenge you to rise, who model the control you want to build, who remind you of your values when you forget. Connection with disciplined people strengthens your own discipline. There's also the information environment. Every headline, every conversation, every book or video you consume feeds your mental landscape. Are you filling it with outrage, despair, and triviality, or with ideas, solutions, and perspective? Guarding your information diet is as critical as guarding your food diet. Garbage in, garbage out. Curate your inputs with the same care you use in choosing what to eat. That doesn't mean ignoring the world, but it does mean refusing to drown in negativity you cannot control. Focus on sources that empower you to act wisely. Let's explore how this applies to the 4 pillars. For the mouth, if you want to speak with more control, spend time in environments where thoughtful dialogue is the norm. Join groups that practice respectful debate or storytelling, and your speech will sharpen naturally. For the mind, if you want clarity, design a workspace that minimizes distraction and maximizes focus. For the mood, if you want calm, cultivate spaces filled with natural light, uplifting music, or inspiring visuals. For money, if you want stability, surround yourself with people who talk about growth, investment, and stewardship rather than just consumption. Environment is leverage. It multiplies the effects of your choices. Here's a practical method. Audit your environments one by one. Write down your main physical, digital, social, and informational spaces. For each, ask, does this environment pull me toward the person I want to be, or push me away? Then make one small adjustment. Remove one temptation. Add one supportive trigger. Over time, these changes accumulate into an ecosystem that makes self-control natural rather than forced. Consider the story of someone trying to quit smoking, alone, relying on willpower. They relapse repeatedly. But when they redesign their environment, removing cigarettes from the house, avoiding places that trigger cravings, spending more time with non-smokers, filling their schedule with new activities, the battle changes. The habit loses its grip, not because their willpower grew infinitely stronger, but because the environment stopped feeding the old cycle. The same principle applies to every habit you want to build or break. Another overlooked environment is time. The way you structure your day either supports control or undermines it. If your mornings are chaotic, the rest of the day stumbles. If your evenings are filled with mindless distraction, your mornings suffer. Designing rhythms, morning rituals, evening wind downs, work sprints followed by rests, creates temporal environments that hold you steady. Time itself can be shaped to your advantage. The principle extends to relationships with yourself. Your inner environment, the self-talk, the expectations you set, the way you treat mistakes, matters as much as any external factor. If your inner world is filled with criticism, sabotage, and shame, your outer disciplines will crumble. But if your inner environment is filled with compassion, curiosity, and determination, you'll have the resilience to continue, even when external environments falter. This is why mastering environment is not optional. It is strategic. You can try to swim upstream against constant friction, or you can redirect the current so it carries you where you want to go. The disciplined know that relying only on willpower is foolish. They use environment as their silent ally. They set up cues, design spaces, and curate people so that good choices are the default, not the exception. Imagine waking up tomorrow in a home that inspires focus, a digital world that fuels growth, friendships that uplift, and a mind filled with empowering ideas. Would self-control feel like a constant battle, or would it flow more naturally? That vision is not fantasy. It's the predictable outcome of environment design. Step by step, adjustment by adjustment, you can build a life where the surroundings support your highest self. So stop expecting yourself to win in environments designed for you to lose. Start designing spaces that whisper to you, you can. And when you do, you'll find that control no longer feels like climbing a mountain. It feels like walking a path already paved beneath your feet. Every great transformation in life begins with something so small it almost looks invisible. One push-up, one kind word, $1 saved, one deep breath before reacting, and yet stacked over time. These tiny decisions create a momentum that can carry you to heights you never thought possible. This is the compound effect, The truth that small, consistent actions, repeated over days, months, and years, add up to extraordinary results. It's easy to dismiss the small because it doesn't make headlines, but it is the small that shapes destinies. Think about water dripping on stone. A single drop seems powerless, but drop after drop, year after year, carves valleys. Or consider the power of compound interest. A modest sum invested consistently doubles and triples until it becomes wealth far beyond what seemed possible at the start. The same principle applies to every area of your life. One choice feels insignificant. 10 choices feel like progress. 1,000 choices transform your identity. Why do so many fail to harness the compound effect? Because they underestimate the small. They think, skipping one workout won't matter. Spending $20 impulsively won't matter. Saying one careless word won't matter. And in isolation, they're right, it doesn't. But choices are rarely isolated. They repeat. They stack. The danger is not in the single slip, but in the pattern it creates. Likewise, the power is not in the single disciplined choice, but in the habit it builds. Let's apply this to your mouth. One pause before responding in anger may not change your life, but a daily practice of pausing reshapes your relationships. Over a year, you become someone others trust because your words carry thoughtfulness. Apply it to your mind. One reframed thought may not erase anxiety, but hundreds of reframed thoughts retrain your brain to focus on solutions instead of spirals. Apply it to your mood. One intentional breath may not prevent stress, but practicing daily calm builds resilience, so storms no longer toss you as violently. Apply it to money. Saving $5 once doesn't create wealth, but saving it weekly builds security that compounds into freedom. The secret is consistency. Sporadic bursts of effort don't compound. Starting a diet on Monday and quitting by Friday yields nothing. Reading 3 books in January and none for the rest of the year produces little change. True compounding requires persistence through boredom. The most powerful habits are often the least glamorous. Flossing, journaling, exercising, budgeting. They lack excitement in the moment, but their cumulative effect is massive. Here's where mindset comes in. You must learn to love the process, not just the outcome. If you only chase the visible result, six-pack abs, a huge bank account, flawless calm, you'll quit when results come slowly. But if you fall in love with the daily discipline, the sweat of the workout, the peace of saving, the clarity of journaling, you'll persist long enough for the compound effect to work its magic. A useful question to ask is, what direction is this habit taking me if I repeat it for 10 years? Eat junk food daily, and the direction points to disease. Save consistently, and the direction points to security. Speak harshly in arguments, and the direction points to broken trust. Practice patience, and the direction points to strong relationships. Small choices are arrows, each pointing to a destination. Alone, they feel meaningless. Together, they chart the course of your life. Let's ground this with a story. 2 friends start their careers at the same time. One saves $50 a week, the other spends freely. After the first year, the saver has only a modest sum, hardly impressive. The spender feels no loss. After 5 years, the saver has a few thousand. The spender has debt. After 10 years, the saver has tens of thousands compounding interest. The spender is stressed by bills. After 20 years, the difference is staggering. One is financially free, the other enslaved by money. The difference wasn't a lottery win or sudden windfall. It was small, consistent choices compounded over time. This principle doesn't only apply to positive habits. Neglect compounds too. Ignore your health for years, and you pay the price in illness. Neglect relationships, and they wither. Neglect learning, and opportunities pass you by. The compound effect doesn't care whether your habits are constructive or destructive. It amplifies whatever you feed it. So, how do you harness it? Begin with keystone habits, small practices that trigger positive ripples. Exercise is one. People who exercise consistently often eat better, sleep better, and focus better. Gratitude journaling is another. It shifts mindset, which influences mood, relationships, and resilience. Budgeting weekly is a keystone for money. It reduces stress and builds intentionality. Identify 1 or 2 keystone habits and commit to them relentlessly. Over time, they multiply into changes across all areas of your life. Another practice is tracking. Compounding is invisible day to day, but tracking makes it visible. Write down your workouts, your savings, your moments of patience. Over months, you'll see patterns emerge. Tracking provides proof to your brain that progress is real, even when it feels slow. This proof fuels motivation to continue. Patience is critical. We live in an instant gratification culture. You're promised quick fixes. Lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. Get rich in 30 days. Rewire your brain overnight. But real transformation doesn't work that way. It is slow, steady, almost invisible, until suddenly, it isn't. Just like water boiling. For minutes, nothing seems to happen. Then suddenly, bubbles erupt. That's how compounding works. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Then everything. The question is whether you can persist through the quiet stage. Let's imagine how this plays out in mood control. Suppose you begin a nightly practice of writing down 3 things you did well that day. At first, it feels silly. After a month, you notice you're less harsh on yourself. After 6 months, your overall outlook brightens. After a year, people describe you as more positive and resilient. Did one journal entry change your life? No, but hundreds compounded did. The compound effect also builds identity. Every small act is a vote for who you are. Skip dessert today, and you vote for I am healthy. Save money today, and you vote for I am responsible. Speak kindly today, and you vote for I am thoughtful. One vote doesn't decide the election, but many votes, over time, shape the identity you live into. The beauty of compounding is that it is available to everyone. You don't need extraordinary talent, wealth, or connections. You only need consistency. Ordinary actions, repeated, create extraordinary results. That is why disciplined people often appear lucky. They aren't lucky. They are compounding. Their luck was built daily, invisibly, until it appeared suddenly to others. So ask yourself, what is one small, repeatable action I can begin today? Not something grand, but something sustainable. Because the secret of the compound effect is not intensity, but consistency. Tiny hinges swing big doors. And when you align your mouth, mind, mood, and money with this principle, you'll wake up one day to a life transformed, not by miracles, but by thousands of faithful steps compounded into greatness. Inside your head, there is a voice that never sleeps. It comments on your choices, criticizes your mistakes, forecasts your failures, and sometimes cheers you on. That voice is your internal dialogue, and it is far more powerful than most people realize. It can sabotage you or strengthen you, depending on whether you leave it unchecked or take command. Mastering this internal dialogue is like becoming the editor of the story your mind tells. Instead of letting the voice drag you through doubt, you train it to guide you toward confidence, clarity, and courage. Think about how many decisions you make every day, from what you wear, to how you greet a coworker, to whether you speak up in a meeting, to whether you stick to your workout. Every one of those decisions is shaped by the commentary playing in your head. You look ridiculous. They'll laugh at you. You're not ready. Or, on the positive side, you've got this. One more step. Do it anyway. The quality of your life depends on which version of that dialogue dominates. Most people never realize that this voice was programmed. It echoes your childhood, your parents' words, your teacher's criticisms, society's standards. It repeats labels you once accepted: lazy, shy, irresponsible, unworthy. And because it speaks in your own voice, you assume it must be true. But thoughts are not facts. They are habits. And like any habit, they can be broken and rebuilt. So the first step is awareness. Begin listening to your inner voice as if it were another person. When you catch yourself thinking, "I always fail," pause and ask, would I let a friend talk to me like this? If not, why tolerate it from myself? Awareness creates distance. Instead of being immersed in the voice, you begin observing it. That shift is everything, because what you can observe, you can change. Once you observe, the next step is challenging. Internal dialogue thrives on exaggerations. Always. Never. Everyone. No one. These are rarely true. Challenge them. Really? Do I always fail? What about last month when I succeeded? By questioning the voice, you weaken its authority. Over time, you replace absolute destructive language with accurate, empowering language. But awareness and challenge alone aren't enough. You must replace. Imagine trying to stop a bad habit like biting your nails. If you only stop, the habit creeps back. But if you replace it, say, by clasping your hands, you fill the gap. Internal dialogue works the same way. When the voice says, "I can't handle this," replace it with, "I can handle this step right now." When it says, "I'll never change," replace it with, "Change is slow, but I'm changing." Replacement turns your inner critic into an inner coach. And here's the secret. Repetition is key. You can't say one positive phrase and expect transformation. Just as negative self-talk took years to embed, positive self-talk requires daily repetition. Affirmations are powerful, not because they're magical, but because they're consistent. Over time, they overwrite the old script. Let's explore how internal dialogue links directly with the 4 pillars. For your mouth. Your inner words shape your outer words. If you constantly tell yourself, "I'm awkward," you'll speak awkwardly. But if you tell yourself, "I can connect," you'll communicate with more ease. For your mind. Internal dialogue is the steering wheel. If it says, "This will never work," your thoughts spiral into hopelessness. But if it says, "Let's find one way to make it work," your thoughts generate solutions. For your mood, internal dialogue is the thermostat. If it says, "This is the worst day ever," your emotions sink. If it says, "This is tough, but I'll get through," your emotions stabilize. For your money, internal dialogue drives financial behavior. If it says, "I'll always be broke," you self-sabotage. If it says, "I'm learning to manage money," you move toward discipline. The voice also affects your identity. Every time you say, "I am," you're programming yourself. "I am terrible with money. I am anxious. I am unlucky in relationships." These statements are not harmless. They are self-fulfilling prophecies. But you can reprogram identity by changing the declarations. "I am learning to master money. I am building resilience. I am cultivating healthy relationships." Speak who you want to become, not who you fear you are. Visualization adds another layer. When you mentally rehearse a future event, an interview, a speech, a negotiation, you combine pictures with words. If your internal dialogue during visualization is positive, you program success. Athletes use this constantly. They don't just see themselves winning. They hear themselves thinking, "I'm strong, I'm fast, I'm unstoppable." You can apply the same to any goal. But let's address a common objection. Isn't positive self-talk just lying to yourself? Not if it's framed accurately. Saying, "I am a millionaire" when you're broke may feel false. But saying, "I'm becoming financially disciplined" is both true and empowering. The goal isn't to pretend you're something you're not. It's to remind yourself of your direction, not just your current condition. One of the most transformative practices is self-compassion. Many people speak to themselves more harshly than they would ever speak to a loved one. They replay mistakes, call themselves names, and punish themselves mentally. But research shows that self-compassion, not self-criticism, fuels growth. If you treat yourself kindly after a failure, you're more likely to try again. If you berate yourself, you're more likely to quit. Internal dialogue that says, "That was a mistake, but I'm still worthy," builds resilience. You can also train your inner voice with cues. For example, every time you catch yourself thinking negatively, add the word "yet." "I can't do this yet. I don't understand yet." That single word shifts the dialogue from final to temporary. It turns walls into doors. Another technique is journaling your inner voice. Write down common phrases your mind repeats. Then write counterphrases that you'd prefer to believe. Over time, the counterphrases become your default script. Consider how internal dialogue shapes emotional regulation. If someone criticizes you and your inner voice screams, "I'm worthless," you collapse. But if it calmly says, "This is one opinion, not the truth," you stay centered. If traffic delays you and your voice says, "This ruins everything," your mood plummets. But if it says, "This gives me time to breathe," your mood stabilizes. Same event, different inner story, completely different experience. For money, internal dialogue is often the biggest barrier. If you grew up hearing, "We can't afford it," or "Rich people are greedy," those scripts echo in adulthood. They cause sabotage, overspending, under-earning, avoiding investment. Rewriting those scripts is crucial. You can replace them with, "I am capable of creating wealth," or "Money is a tool I can manage wisely." Even relationships depend on your inner voice. If it constantly says, "They don't really like me," you'll act insecure. If it says, "I am worth love and respect," you'll interact with confidence. What you believe internally, you project externally. Internal dialogue also determines perseverance. In challenges, one voice says, "This is pointless, give up." The other says, "This is hard, but keep going." Which voice wins decides your destiny. Talent doesn't guarantee success. Self-talk does. Because perseverance is built not on perfect conditions, but on encouraging words repeated to yourself in the storm. So, How do you practice? Start each morning with intentional dialogue. Before you check your phone, declare aloud or silently, I choose focus today. I choose patience. I choose wise spending. I choose calm. It may feel awkward at first, but it sets the tone. Throughout the day, monitor your thoughts. If negative, pause, reframe, replace. At night, reflect. What did I say to myself today? Did it empower me or drain me? Over time, you'll notice a shift. The critic grows quieter. The coach grows louder. Your identity evolves. And as your identity evolves, your behavior follows. Because who you believe you are determines what you do. The journey of mastering internal dialogue is never complete. New challenges bring new doubts. But once you learn to recognize the voice, question it, and reshape it, you gain control over the most powerful narrative in your life. And when the story you tell yourself changes, the story you live changes too. Money is rarely just about money. It is about what money represents: security, freedom, power, identity, self-worth, opportunity. And because of this, your financial life is never only mathematical, it is deeply psychological. You can learn every budgeting trick, master every spreadsheet, memorize every investing formula, yet still sabotage yourself if your underlying money psychology is broken. The patterns you carry from childhood, the beliefs you've inherited, the emotions you attach to spending and saving, these are the forces quietly shaping your financial destiny. Master them, and money becomes a tool of liberation. Ignore them, and money becomes a source of endless stress. Consider how early messages shape financial behavior. Maybe you grew up hearing, "We can't afford that," every time you asked for something. Maybe you watched parents fight about bills. Maybe you saw people with wealth being mocked as greedy. These experiences carved grooves in your subconscious. As an adult, you may fear money, resent it, overspend to rebel against scarcity, or hoard it out of anxiety. Until you uncover and challenge these scripts, they run your financial life like hidden software. One of the most common destructive patterns is the scarcity mindset, the belief that there is never enough. Scarcity whispers, if they succeed, you lose. If you spend, you'll run out. If you invest, you'll risk everything. This mindset creates fear, paralysis, and jealousy. But money is not a zero-sum game. Wealth can be created, opportunities multiplied, value generated. The antidote is abundance thinking, believing there are always opportunities to earn, create, and grow. Abundance says, there's more where that came from. I can learn, I can generate, I can expand. This shift opens the door to creativity and optimism in financial decisions. Another destructive pattern is emotional spending. You feel stressed, so you shop. You feel bored, so you click add to cart. You feel lonely, so you dine out expensively just to avoid silence. The purchase gives a hit of dopamine, temporary relief, but the bill remains. Emotional spending is not about need, it's about numbing. The key is learning to recognize the emotional trigger and finding healthier outlets. Instead of shopping, maybe you exercise, call a friend, journal, or walk. By decoupling emotions from purchases, you reclaim control. Let's talk about identity. If your internal dialogue says, "I'm terrible with money," that identity governs your behavior. You avoid learning. You repeat mistakes. You prove yourself right. But if you adopt the identity of, "I'm someone who manages money wisely," your behavior follows. You start budgeting, saving, asking questions, learning about investing, not because of willpower alone, but because you're acting in alignment with a new identity. Identity-based money psychology is more powerful than goals. Goals say, I want to save $10,000. Identity says, I am a saver. One is an outcome, the other is a lifestyle. Money psychology also shapes risk tolerance. Some people avoid all risk, parking everything in savings accounts because they fear loss. Others chase risky investments out of greed or desperation. Both extremes sabotage wealth. Healthy psychology balances education with courage. You learn about risk, diversify, and accept that growth requires some discomfort. You neither cling to safety nor gamble recklessly. Shame is another hidden barrier. Many feel ashamed of debt, of past mistakes, of not knowing enough. That shame keeps them stuck. They avoid looking at bank statements, avoid seeking help, avoid planning. But shame never pays down a debt. Action does. Forgiving yourself for past mistakes is not indulgence. It is strategy. Once you release shame, you free energy to learn and act. A powerful practice is to separate facts from stories. The fact might be, I have $5,000 in credit card debt. The story might be, I'm a failure. I'll never recover. Facts are neutral. Stories are interpretations. By separating them, you gain power. The fact becomes solvable. The story can be rewritten. Instead of, I'll never recover, the new story might be, I've made mistakes, but I'm learning skills that will help me recover and thrive. Your money personality type matters too. Spenders enjoy life but often sacrifice the future. Savers protect the future, but may deprive themselves in the present. Avoiders stick their heads in the sand, hoping problems vanish. Worriers obsess endlessly, trapped in anxiety. Each type has strengths and weaknesses. Spenders often have generosity and vision. Savers have discipline. Avoiders sometimes live lightly. Worriers are cautious. The goal is not to change who you are, but to harness the strengths of your type while counteracting the weaknesses. How does money psychology link to the 4 pillars? When you master your mouth, you avoid money-damaging conversations, gossip, complaints, promises you can't keep. When you master your mind, you challenge scarcity thoughts, reframe setbacks, and cultivate abundance. When you master your mood, you reduce emotional spending and resist financial panic. When you master your money psychology itself, you turn money into a servant, not a master. Let's make it practical. Begin with money journaling. For 1 month, record not just what you spend, but how you felt before and after. Patterns will emerge. You'll notice that stress leads to fast food, boredom leads to online shopping, anxiety leads to unnecessary subscriptions. With awareness, you can intervene. Next, practice delayed gratification. Before major purchases, pause 24 hours. For larger ones, pause a week. Most impulses fade. This rewires your brain away from instant dopamine toward long-term satisfaction. Also, create positive money rituals, weekly money check-ins, celebrating financial milestones, practicing gratitude for what you already have. These rituals replace fear with intentionality. Finally, embrace financial education. Fear thrives in ignorance. Learn the basics of budgeting, debt reduction, investing. Start small. Each step increases confidence. Each small success compounds into lasting wealth. Remember, money is not just about numbers, it is about narratives. Change the story you tell yourself about money, and you change your financial reality. Tell yourself, I am worthy of abundance. I am capable of learning. I am disciplined with money. And then, let your actions align. Over time, those internal declarations become external truth. When you step back and look at the four areas, mouth, mind, mood, and money, you realize something powerful. They aren't isolated compartments. They're threads of the same fabric, strands in the same rope. Tug on one, and the others move. Neglect one, and the others weaken. Strengthen one, and the others rise. True mastery doesn't come from working on them separately, like unrelated projects. It comes from weaving them together into a single system of self-mastery, where each supports and reinforces the others. Integration is the secret multiplier. Think of your life as a structure built on four pillars. If one pillar is cracked, the building tilts. You might manage for a while, but stress accumulates, and eventually the imbalance shows. But when all four pillars are aligned and strong, the structure is stable, resilient, and able to rise higher. Integration is not about perfection, it's about balance. Take your mouth, for example. Words are born in the mind, carried on the breath, and charged with emotion. If your mind is cluttered with negativity, your words reflect it. If your mood is unstable, your words carry that instability. If your money is a constant source of stress, it leaks into your tone with family or coworkers. Controlling your mouth isn't only about pausing before speaking. It's about what your mind is thinking, what your emotions are doing, and whether financial anxiety is amplifying the tension. Or consider your money. If you're constantly stressed about bills, you become short-tempered with your partner. Mouth. You spiral into anxiety. Mind. You sink into frustration. Mood. Money mastery, therefore, is never just dollars and cents. It's directly tied to emotional regulation, mental framing, and communication. That's why people who clean up their finances often notice improvements in their relationships and mental clarity. Integration works the other way too. A calm mood makes it easier to think clearly. Mind. Clear thoughts help you choose words wisely. Mouth. Wise communication opens doors that improve financial opportunities. Money. Round and round, each area influencing the others. Mastery in one creates leverage in all. This is why compartmentalized advice often fails. Someone tries to fix their finances without addressing the emotional triggers that cause overspending. Or they try to control their anger without noticing the anxious thoughts fueling it. Or they try to think positively while surrounding themselves with chaotic environments that destabilize their mood. Without integration, progress is temporary. With integration, progress becomes permanent. The foundation of integration is self-awareness. You must see yourself as a whole system, not a collection of disconnected parts. When you notice you've snapped at someone, ask, was that really about the words? Or was it about the stress I feel from money? When you notice you're spending impulsively, ask, is this really about the purchase? Or about my mood? This cross-pillar awareness is like having a dashboard instead of a single warning light. It shows you the connections, so you can address root causes, not just symptoms. Integration also means daily alignment. Instead of setting separate goals for each pillar, you weave them together. For example, today I will pause before speaking. Mouth. Reframe negativity. Mind. Breathe through stress. Mood. And spend intentionally. Money. One daily ritual can touch all four at once. Journaling, for instance, clarifies thoughts. Mind. Processes emotions. Mood. Sharpens self-awareness of speech patterns. Mouth. And helps track spending habits. Money. Meditation does the same. Exercise as well. Keystone habits ripple across all pillars when you view them through the lens of integration. Stories illustrate this best. Imagine someone who decides to practice patience with their words at home. They pause before snapping at their spouse about money. That pause prevents an argument, which improves their mood. With a calmer mood, they think more clearly about budgeting. With a clearer mind, they save money instead of spending impulsively. One act of mouth control cascades into mood stability, mental clarity, and financial progress. That's integration in motion. Or imagine someone who develops a habit of saving a small amount consistently. This money discipline reduces financial stress, which calms their mood. With less stress, their thoughts are clearer. With clearer thoughts, they communicate better at work. With better communication, they earn promotions. Money mastery triggered a chain reaction across all pillars. Integration also means creating systems that touch multiple areas at once. For example, setting up a weekly family finance meeting isn't just about money. It's also about communicating clearly. Mouth. Staying calm during discussions. Mood. And framing conversations positively. Mind. A single practice strengthens all four pillars simultaneously. Another layer of integration is environment design. If your environment is cluttered, it affects your mind. If it drains your mood, your communication suffers. If it encourages impulsive spending, your money suffers. But if you design your environment for calm, organized spaces, inspiring cues, supportive people, you create conditions where all four pillars thrive together. Integration requires recognizing feedback loops. Negative loops look like this. Financial stress leads to anxiety. Anxiety leads to snapping at loved ones. Snapping damages relationships. Damaged relationships increase stress. Positive loops look like this. Mindful breathing calms mood. Calm mood clarifies thoughts. Clear thoughts lead to kind words. Kind words strengthen relationships. Stronger relationships reduce stress. Integration is about breaking destructive loops and amplifying constructive ones. It also requires identity-level change. When you say, "I am someone who controls my words, thoughts, emotions, and money," you stop treating these as separate skills and start embodying them as a single identity. The integrated person doesn't need to remember dozens of tactics. They simply act from who they are. So how do you practice integration daily? Begin with a morning check-in. How will I align my mouth, mind, mood, and money today? Throughout the day, notice cross-pillar patterns. If my mood is off, how is it affecting my money? If my money is tight, how is it affecting my words? In the evening, reflect. Where did one pillar support or sabotage the others today? These reflections deepen awareness until integration becomes instinct. Integration doesn't mean you'll never slip. It means when one pillar wobbles, you use the others to restore balance. If you overspend, you stabilize your mood and reframe your mind to prevent spiraling. If you speak harshly, you calm your emotions and reframe your thoughts before repairing the relationship. The strength of integration is that you always have leverage somewhere. You are never powerless, because one pillar can support the others. Ultimately, integration is what transforms these practices from self-improvement tips into a way of life. It's the difference between juggling 4 fragile balls and weaving them into a single rope. A rope can bear weight, endure storms, and pull you forward. When your mouth, mind, mood, and money are integrated, you're no longer patching weaknesses. You're operating from wholeness, and wholeness is unshakable. Change does not happen in a day. Mastery is not the result of a single decision. It is the outcome of hundreds of decisions layered over time. If you want to control your mouth, mind, mood, and money, you need more than insight. You need a plan, a clear, structured, step-by-step process that guides you from awareness to discipline, from chaos to control, from drifting to deliberate living. That is why a 90-day transformation is so powerful. It is long enough to create lasting habits, yet short enough to feel achievable. 90 days can alter the trajectory of your entire life if you approach it with focus and consistency. Here's how the plan works. You build in layers. Each week introduces a simple practice, never overwhelming you, always stacking on what came before. The design alternates between awareness practices and behavioral practices. Why? Because you must see before you can act. Awareness opens your eyes. Behavior cements the change. Over 3 months, you gradually align the 4 pillars into one system of self-mastery. Weeks 1-2, Awareness Foundation. The first 2 weeks are about observation, not overhaul. In week 1, you track your words, carry a small notebook or use your phone. Each time you regret something you said, snapping, complaining, gossiping, over-explaining, jot it down. No judgment, just record. By the end of the week, you'll see patterns you never noticed. In week 2, you track your thoughts. Pause 3 times daily and write down the dominant thought at that moment. Again, no judgment, just awareness. These practices illuminate the scripts running your mouth and mind. Weeks 3-4, Mood and Money Awareness. In week 3, track your moods 3 times daily. Label your state: calm, anxious, irritated, energized, sad. Alongside, write what triggered it. You'll discover how external events and internal stories shape your emotions. In week 4, track your money. Write down every expense, no matter how small. Don't change spending yet. Just observe. These 4 weeks create a mirror. You see your words, thoughts, moods, and money as they are, not as you imagine. Weeks 5-6, Small shifts in behavior. With awareness in place, you begin to shift. In week 5, practice the pause. Before speaking, before reacting, before buying, pause 3 seconds. This simple habit spreads across all pillars. In week 6, implement a daily reset ritual. Each evening, write down one thing you did well with your mouth, one positive thought, one mood you managed, one financial choice you made wisely. This builds identity. I am someone who practices control. Weeks 7-8, building keystone habits. Now you add disciplines that ripple across pillars. In week 7, start a morning ritual, 10 minutes only, deep breathing, mood, gratitude journaling, mind, affirmation of patience with words, mouth, and reviewing one financial goal, money. In week 8, automate one good habit, set up automatic savings, or schedule daily reading, or block time for exercise. Automation reduces reliance on willpower and builds consistency. Weeks 9-10, expanding strength. By now, momentum grows. In week 9, practice silence daily. Choose one conversation where you listen fully without interrupting. This sharpens your mouth control, deepens relationships, and calms emotions. In week 10, practice reframing. Each time you notice a negative thought, add, yet. I can't handle this, yet. This strengthens your mind and stabilizes your mood. Weeks 11-12, mastering emotional and financial triggers. Week 11 targets emotional triggers. Identify 3 situations that consistently derail your mood: traffic, criticism, delays. Prepare replacement responses: deep breathing, reframing, curiosity. Practice them intentionally. Week 12 targets financial triggers. Notice what tempts you. Sales, boredom, online shopping. Create a 24-hour delay rule for any non-essential purchase. These practices dismantle sabotage before it begins. Weeks 13. Integration and identity. The final week integrates everything. Review your journal from the start. Notice how your words softened, your thoughts clarified, your mood steadied, your money improved. Write a declaration of identity. I am someone who controls my mouth, mind, mood, and money. From here, the 90-day plan is not an end, but a foundation. You continue, adding layers, strengthening habits, deepening mastery. The power of this plan is in its structure. It doesn't demand perfection. It demands persistence. It doesn't overwhelm. It builds steadily. Each week feels manageable, yet together, they create radical change. Imagine yourself at day 90. Your words no longer explode carelessly. Your thoughts no longer spiral into despair. Your mood no longer swings wildly. Your money no longer vanishes without explanation. You stand taller, calmer, clearer, freer. That version of you is not fantasy. It is the inevitable result of steady practice. So commit. For 90 days. Treat your life as an experiment. Test these practices. Observe yourself. Adjust where needed. You will stumble. But stumbling is not failure. Each stumble is data. Each return is strength. What matters is not flawless execution, but relentless return. And when the 90 days close, something extraordinary will happen. You will no longer be practicing self-control. You will be embodying it. Control will not feel like effort. It will feel like identity. You will realize that mastery is not about what you do occasionally, but about who you become consistently. And once you become that person, the world opens to you in ways you once thought impossible. Picture this moment. You, standing at the edge of 90 days. Not the same person who began, but someone sharpened, steadied, transformed. You've discovered that control is not about restriction. It's about liberation. Your mouth no longer betrays you with reckless words, because you've learned the strength of silence and the power of thoughtful speech. Your mind no longer drags you down dark alleys of doubt, because you've trained it to reframe, to redirect, to focus. Your mood no longer rules you like a storm, because you've found the pause, the breath, the resilience to stand calm in chaos. And your money, once a source of stress and strain, now bends to your will, aligned with your values, building your security, creating your freedom. This isn't theory anymore. It's practice, lived out in small choices that stacked, one on top of another, until they became identity. You've seen the compound effect at work. You've witnessed how controlling one pillar strengthens the others, how the integration of all four builds a foundation no storm can easily shake. You've felt the discomfort of change, but you've also felt the pride of persistence, the quiet thrill of keeping promises to yourself, the dignity of growth no one can take from you. But here's the truth. This journey doesn't end at 90 days, or even at the last word of this narration. Life will keep testing you. New challenges will appear. Old habits will whisper. The world will offer temptations, shortcuts, excuses. That's why knowledge alone is never enough. Action is the only proof of transformation. The voice you've heard here is not meant to replace your own. It's meant to awaken it. From this point forward, the challenge is yours. Will you live as someone carried by impulses, or as someone who commands themselves fully? The choice is not easy, but it is simple. Every day, you will be asked, by words, by thoughts, by moods, by money, who's in control? Your answer will not be in what you claim, but in what you do. Choose mastery, choose awareness, choose persistence, choose to live as the architect of your life, not the victim of circumstance. Because in the end, control is not about domination, it is about freedom. The freedom to live aligned with your values, to create the future you desire, to leave behind the cycles of regret that once defined you. That freedom is waiting. The next choice is yours.